Consider the mighty Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius, who faced the daily chaos of his empire. What was his approach? He didn't dwell on his troubles. He understood that his true power lay in his mind and his reactions. Now look at yourself. How much energy do you expend repeating the same old stories about what you lack or what causes you pain? Your words are more than just sounds. They're commands that can shackle you if you don't control your language. This message isn't about making excuses. Instead, it offers a Stoic challenge to break free from self-limiting narratives. You'll learn to stop dwelling on what weakens you and begin building the life you truly desire. Discover the strength found in silence, how to safeguard your journey, let your achievements speak for themselves, and rewrite your own story with conviction. If you're prepared to transform your narrative and become a person the Stoics would admire, stay with us until the end. Each piece of advice has the potential to reshape your life. If this message resonates with you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Here, we embrace change through awareness and action. The power of your personal narrative. Your personal story, the one you tell yourself and share with the world, holds immense power. It's an often underestimated tool that the ancient Stoics understood profoundly. Imagine a sailor caught in a storm. They can't control the ocean's fury, but they have authority over how they steer their ship. Similarly, while we can't always control external events, we can choose the words we use to describe our experiences. Figures like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca didn't just philosophize for intellectual amusement. Their writings served as constant self-reminders. What we think, and especially what we say, plants the seeds of our reality. If, day after day, you tell yourself you're fragile, that life is an unfair burden, or that setbacks are your destiny, you're not just internalizing these beliefs, you're actively shaping them into your lived experience. The Stoic perspective isn't about denying pain or difficulty, but about firmly refusing to let these circumstances dictate the tone and content of your language. They understood that every word spoken is essentially a direct instruction to our minds, thus shaping our path. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the understanding that while we don't have absolute control over what happens around us, we do have full command over our internal responses. This is where your narrative becomes crucial. By constantly voicing your shortcomings, your persistent wounds, and your failures, you give them undue power, allowing them to define your identity. The Stoic learns to observe this impulse to complain or lament and actively counteract it. Instead of replaying the drama of suffering, they consciously choose to tell a story of lessons learned from adversity, of resilience in challenging times, and of forward-looking action. This isn't about denying reality or feigning happiness, but a firm decision to stop nourishing the mental weeds that only drain your energy with your words. Changing your narrative means shifting the filter through which you interpret existence, which inevitably alters your energy, guides your decisions, and ultimately redefines your tangible reality. A Stoicism-inspired narrative is deliberate, fact-based, and above all authentic. There's no room for empty complaints that don't lead to action or for unnecessary exaggeration of personal dramas. Speaking from a Stoic perspective means speaking from the truth of the situation and with a clear intention, typically aimed at virtue or progress. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. Emotions are part of the human experience, but it does mean consciously choosing how and when to express those emotions. When a turbulent emotion overwhelms you, silence can be a wiser refuge than impulsive words. If you choose to speak, do so to build, to inspire, to advance on your own path or that of others. The Stoic practitioner knows their words are their calling card, a mark of their character, and that every communicative interaction is an opportunity to practice virtues like moderation, honesty, and compassion, both towards themselves in their inner process and towards others in interaction. The discipline in using words, in consciously choosing what to say and how to say it, is a direct reflection of the inner discipline one cultivates. The Stoic trains their mind not to suppress impulses, but to avoid being carried away by automatic complaints, corrosive criticism, or paralyzing self-pity. They know that what comes out of their mouth is a faithful reflection of their current internal state. Therefore, they consciously pause before speaking impulsively. They breathe, observe the situation and their inner reaction, and then decide on the most appropriate response. This pause, This tiny yet powerful space between the external or internal stimulus and the verbal response is where true freedom lies. It's not a silence born of fear or inhibition, but speaking only when the contribution of your words outweighs the value of silence. In this way, language transforms from a mere emotional outburst into a precise tool of self-mastery, of deep respect for oneself and the present moment. When you make the conscious and sustained decision to change how you narrate yourself and your life, you begin to observe tangible transformations in various areas of your existence. The way your environment responds to you shifts, your interpersonal relationships are nourished by a different energy, and your own vitality seems to increase. You are no longer the protagonist in an endless drama, but become the conscious architect of a new story that is just beginning to unfold. Stoicism goes beyond reading ancient texts. It's a way of life actively practiced in every word you choose, in every story you tell about yourself and others, and in every consciously chosen moment of silence. Change the story you tell yourself, and you will see your life begin to change. It is a principle that is simple in its essence, but immensely powerful in its application, guiding how others treat you. Within the intricate web of daily human interactions, we constantly send subtle signals about how we expect or allow others to treat us. The words we use, our tone of voice, even what we leave unsaid, form a behavioral blueprint for those around us. Stoic philosophy illuminates this truth. You're not only responsible for your inner emotional states, but crucially, for how you outwardly communicate those states and experiences. When someone consistently expresses themselves from a position of insecurity, perpetual complaint, or destructive self-criticism, they are sending a clear message to their audience. This repetitive narrative acts as a kind of implicit manual for others, who often unconsciously learn to deal with this person from the perspective of someone they perceive as weak, insecure, or incapable of facing life's challenges. Deeply aware of the formative power of their language, the Stoic chooses their words with great care, even under the most difficult and demanding circumstances. The way you speak about yourself, your circumstances, and your experiences is essentially a statement about how others should interact with you. If most of your conversations are dominated by complaints about what happened, verbal self-limitations regarding your abilities, or a victim mentality towards events, you are not only solidifying and reinforcing this negative self-image in your own mind, but you are also actively inviting others to perceive it and treat you as if it were an undeniable truth. Stoic teaching reminds us that while vulnerability is an inherent part of being human, there's a significant difference between sharing it from a place of awareness and self-knowledge versus doing so out of impulsive, emotional unrestraint. Speaking with clear articulation, with genuine self-respect and respect for others, and with calm resolve even when feeling exhausted or upset by circumstances, is a tangible demonstration of self-mastery and composure, two cardinal virtues in the pursuit of Stoic wisdom. By maintaining your composure in your communication, those around you learn that you are not someone who is passively swept away by external chaos, but rather that you respond to life from an inner center of tranquility and coherence between your principles and your verbal expression. The tone of your voice, the look that accompanies your words, the strategic pauses you make in conversation, and the way you react or don't react in tense situations often say more than the words you articulate. The Stoic understands that they don't need to resort to vehemence or loudness to be respected, nor do they need to aggressively assert their point of view for their voice to be heard. Their mere presence, the serenity in their expression, and their unwavering ability to maintain calm amidst the storm, create a natural and organic respect around them. When an individual communicates from a position of inner security, respect for others, and clarity in their message, those who interact with them adjust their own behavior accordingly. This is not a manipulative technique to control others, but a conscious act of setting a standard for how one wishes to be treated. And this standard is patiently built day by day, interaction by interaction, conversation by conversation. The inherent power of Stoic speech lies in the unwavering coherence between what is verbally expressed and the actions taken. It's not enough to demand respect or understanding from others. It's essential to first demonstrate that respect and understanding in the way one communicates with oneself and subsequently with the outside world. The Stoic sage pauses before uttering a word, weighing its necessity, the right timing, and the intention behind it. In this way, their personal and professional relationships improve, not because others magically change, but because they themselves have elevated the level of their own communication and, consequently, the quality of their relationships. True respect and solid trust are not elements to be begged for or demanded, but qualities inspired and cultivated through personal coherence and balance in one's dealings with others. When a person consciously chooses to express themselves from this position of authenticity and self-awareness, they become a catalyst for change in their environment. Their words don't poison the atmosphere with negativity, but rather help to purify and improve it. Their words are not a painful echo of still bleeding wounds, but a silent testament to the healing process and the deep integration of important learning experiences. The Stoic understands that every word that passes their lips has the potential to be a seed that fosters mutual respect or a barrier that builds distrust. Therefore, they speak like someone who knows they are shaping the behavior of others, not only by what they say, but above all by how they say it. In this way, their environment gradually and consistently learns to grant them the dignity and respect they afford themselves through their impeccable language and behavior. Guarding your transformation. In the complex and deeply personal journey of growth, one common and often counterproductive tendency is the almost uncontrollable urge to share every small step, every discovery, every bit of progress with the world. Stoicism, in its timeless wisdom, teaches us that true inner transformation is a process that should be considered intimate, almost sacred, and therefore jealously guarded from the intrusion of outside opinions and premature external evaluations. When a person is in the midst of a transformative process, their emerging, still unformed self is inherently vulnerable, much like a young plant just breaking through the soil, needing protection and nurturing in a controlled environment before it can face the harshness of the wind and the intensity of the sun outside. The ancient Stoics intuitively understood that inner strength, that unwavering resilience of the mind, is forged and solidified in silence and tranquility. Far from curious or, worse, critical eyes, they knew that every unsolicited opinion, every external judgment has the potential to become a stumbling block, subtly distracting or even seriously weakening one's personal commitment to the change ahead. The urge to tell everyone about the new habits one is trying to adopt, the ambitious plans being made, or the challenging goals set may initially feel like a wave of motivation and validation. However, often this urge is nothing more than a veiled search for external approval, a need for others to acknowledge and confirm your efforts even before they have yielded tangible results. The Stoic, with their keen sense of introspection, recognizes this desire for validation and questions it, without allowing themselves to be carried away by it. They know with deep conviction that external recognition is inherently fleeting and unstable, and that true inner change can only be achieved and solidified when it arises from a deep personal conviction, not from the temporary applause or momentary attention of others. For this fundamental reason, they decide to quietly advance on their path of transformation, diligently working with iron discipline and unwavering patience to shape their new self, without feeling the need to announce every step to the world. In this way, their life energy is concentrated and flows directly into the process of change itself, into inner and outer action, and is not dispersed by concerns about their image or others' perception of their progress. It is precisely in the fertile ground of silence that the process of change gains unexpected strength. By eliminating external distractions and constant comparison with others, space is created for an honest and deep dialogue with oneself. The Stoic uses this time of silence and reflection to review their actions, adjust their focus if necessary, and correct their course, without the oppressive pressure of having to show immediate results or meet the expectations of others. Each day becomes a new opportunity to grow from the ground up, to solidify the strength of the newly acquired habit or mindset before exposing it to the potential harshness of the outside world. When the transformation you seek is authentic and profound, it doesn't need to be announced with great fanfare. Its reality will naturally become evident through your consistent actions, the serenity you radiate, and the coherence you demonstrate in your daily decisions. Protecting this inner change process does not mean withdrawing into complete isolation or adopting a general suspicious attitude towards everyone. Rather, It means wisely choosing who you grant access to this vulnerable and sacred space of personal transformation. The Stoic shares their progress and challenges only with people who genuinely enrich their path, offer unconditional support, or can inspire them to continue, and not with those prone to easy criticism, sowing unnecessary doubt, or projecting their own limitations. They understand very well that the energy contained in the words of others can have a significant impact on their own path, both positively and negatively. Therefore, they carefully observe their social environment, thoughtfully choose their conversations, and prioritize the quality and depth of their relationships over the mere number of contacts during this delicate growth phase. Ultimately, the process of change, quietly protected and nourished, becomes an inexhaustible source of inner strength. When this transformation has reached a solid maturity, the results speak for themselves and require no further explanation or justification. The Stoic can then choose to share their story, not out of a need for external recognition or validation, but out of an honest desire to inspire others, speaking from the authenticity of a real experience and the deep knowledge that arises from overcome adversity. In this way, change is no longer an empty promise or a distant goal, but becomes a tangible and robust reality, firmly built on the foundations of personal conviction and unwavering serenity. Let your actions speak. We live in an age where attention is a valuable commodity, and digital platforms are overflowing with grand declarations, boastful announcements, and promising speeches. Amidst this constant buzz, the true Stoic chooses a less traveled path, marked by conscious silence and consistent action. The ancient wise ones already recognized that it is considerably easier to put intentions into words than to translate them into deeds. The immediate gratification that comes from sharing your plans with others, receiving praise and congratulations for something you haven't yet achieved, is a subtle but powerful trap. The brain tends to relax with this external validation, falsely assuming that progress has already been made just by proclaiming one's intention. The harsh reality, however, is that nothing substantial has changed until the action is implemented in the real world. Stoic philosophy, in its pragmatism, emphasizes that virtue primarily lies in doing, in concrete implementation, and not just in talking or appearing to do. Therefore, those who embraced this philosophy preferred to work in private silence without actively seeking the approval or applause of the masses, knowing with certainty that true and lasting results have a self-evident power that does not need to be amplified or explained by additional words. The practice of Stoicism fosters the development of genuine humility and unwavering patience, two virtues constantly tested when one consciously chooses to let tangible achievements, not verbal promises, speak for themselves. This is not a strategy to hide your progress out of fear of judgment or personal insecurity, but a strategic decision to protect and channel the energy and mental focus indispensable for building something truly significant and lasting. When you share your goals and aspirations prematurely with others, you risk losing momentum, as external validation can act as a kind of premature reward, paradoxically undermining your inner commitment to the necessary effort. The Stoic knows that true strength is not wasted in empty words, but accumulates and consolidates in productive silence, in the unwavering consistency of daily effort, in those crucial moments when no one else is observing your work, yet you resolutely continue. It is precisely in this intimacy with action that character is forged. Conscious discipline gradually becomes a deeply rooted habit, and progress becomes a palpable presence in your life that does not need to be verbally announced to be recognized. Letting your results speak for themselves is in itself an act of deep respect for yourself and others. True respect cannot be demanded or claimed, but must be gradually earned through the congruence between words and deeds, through concrete actions, and with an unwavering determination that does not depend on the validation or recognition of others. When your daily actions begin to consistently reflect your values and your commitment to your goals, those around you naturally perceive this without you needing to verbally explain it. Your environment begins to respond differently to your presence. Your relationships are strengthened on a foundation of trust and mutual respect, and your reputation, understood as the sum of your actions over time, grows organically and solidly. The Stoic deeply understands that true influence does not stem from verbal promises or declared intentions, but from the silent and compelling power of lived example. Therefore, they rise each day with the firm intention of building something valuable, not with the primary goal of impressing others or seeking their approval. The strategic silence that the Stoic cultivates is not to be confused with passivity or inaction. Rather, it is a silent yet powerful testament to self-mastery and purpose. It is the conscious decision not to waste valuable personal energy on empty speeches and not to succumb to the seductive temptation to seek external validation before the work is done. It is an act of faith and trust in the principle that good work, done with diligence and perseverance, sooner or later manifests itself and becomes evident. Philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus tirelessly emphasize that the only things over which we have true and absolute control are our own actions and inner judgments. The final outcome of our efforts may not come immediately, it may require time and persistence, but the deep inner peace that comes from knowing one has given their best in the process is an intrinsic reward that no one and nothing can take away. In this way, the Stoic learns to find true and lasting satisfaction in the process of acting itself, in every small advance achieved through conscious effort, without feeling the urgent need to communicate it to the outside world to seek validation. At the end of the journey, allowing your results to speak for themselves proves to be one of the purest and highest forms of personal freedom. You stop depending on the volatile opinions of others. You stop exhausting yourself with the incessant task of justifying your decisions or competing for others' attention. You simply move forward with a firm step, building with purpose, and letting time and the tangible evidence of your actions become your most powerful allies. Stoicism reminds you with crystal clarity that truly significant success is often silent, that true greatness does not need to be loudly acknowledged, and that the deepest and most satisfying validation is that which arises from your own unwavering commitment to yourself and your values. When your life, through your consistent actions and silent achievements, begins to reflect your fundamental values, when your personal story tells itself through your deeds, then you have truly understood and internalized the transformative power of action over mere words, mastering your inner voice and actions. The true measure of a person's strength lies not in the fluidity or eloquence of their speech when life's waters are calm, but crucially in the wisdom and control with which they choose their words when the inner storm rages violently. Within the philosophical framework of Stoicism, this discipline applied to the inner world and reflected in both public and private language is considered a cornerstone upon which a life characterized by virtue, emotional balance, and resilience is built. The Stoic masters unequivocally taught that self-mastery, that much-desired self-sufficiency, begins with the conscious control of what one allows to pass from their lips, what one verbally articulates, or even what one repeatedly thinks. This is by no means a violent suppression of legitimate emotions or an artificial simulation of serenity that conceals inner turmoil. Rather, it is about mastering the reactive impulse that arises from emotions or external provocations, consciously and deliberately deciding when it is appropriate to speak and when it is wiser and more virtuous to remain silent. One who has no control over their own language, who speaks impulsively and unfiltered, will hardly be able to effectively control their emotions. And one who has no control over their emotions is constantly at risk of becoming a slave to their own impulses, reacting to the world from inner unrest rather than with wisdom and prudence. The language we use, both in our inner dialogue and in our external interactions, is perhaps the most direct and revealing mirror of our inner state. When the mind is immersed in stress, anxiety, or confusion, the words that come to our lips are often self-critical or critical of others, recurring complaints that lead to no solutions, or impulsive verbal outbursts of anger or frustration. The Stoic, however, diligently trains the ability to create that sacred pause between the stimulus received, whether internal or external, and the verbal or behavioral response they choose. They practice conscious breathing, observe the situation with detachment and serenity, and then decide only then which response best aligns with their values and the purpose of the moment. This small gap, this conscious pause between stimulus and reaction, is the vital space where true personal freedom thrives, where the ability is exercised to not react automatically from an impulse or under external pressure, but to respond deliberately from a position of virtue and prudence. Not every thought that crosses your mind needs to be verbally expressed, and not every emotion needs to be outwardly displayed the moment it arises. Mastering language, understood as the ability to consciously choose what to say and what to keep silent, is not an imposed restriction, but a high form of personal freedom. It is the ability to act from a state of full awareness and not from the chaos dictated by uncontrolled emotions. It is the active decision to choose words that build, that create bridges of understanding, and not words that destroy relationships or undermine one's self-esteem. When language, both inner and outer, becomes a conscious instrument of self-direction and self-expression, life tends to become more stable, predictably so in a positive sense, and interpersonal relationships are nurtured and flourish on a more solid and healthy foundation. This essential discipline is not developed during times of prosperity and ease, but is actively trained and put to the test in the most difficult and challenging moments, when accumulated fatigue, justified anger, or persistent frustration threaten to completely take over your reactions. It is precisely in these moments of maximum inner tension, when everything inside you wants to explode in impulsive words or actions, that the Stoic consciously pauses, takes a deep breath, and waits before acting or speaking. They do this not to please others or maintain a facade of perfection, but primarily to honor themselves, to be proud of their reaction after the situation, and not to feel bitter regret over ill-considered words or impulsive actions. In this way, every word spoken becomes, in a sense, sacred, a faithful reflection of the virtuous and resilient person one is trying to become, and not just an echo of the pain or wound that is still healing. Speaking clearly and distinctly, with a determination based on reason and unwavering respect, even amidst adversity, radically changes the perception others have of you, but more importantly, it changes the deep and lasting relationship you cultivate with yourself. Stoicism summarizes this wisdom in a truth as simple as it is powerful. Whoever masters their tongue also largely controls their mind and their destiny. Discipline in the conscious use of language is essentially an act of deep self-love, a silent but resolute declaration of inner strength and self-sufficiency. It is not a silence born of fear of self-expression or judgment by others, but a silence chosen from inner wisdom. It is the ability to speak only when the contribution and value of your words far outweigh the potential value and power of silence. Thus, every conversation, every verbal interaction becomes an invaluable opportunity to practice Stoic virtues, to show composure in the face of provocation, and to exercise authentic leadership over one's life, guided by mindfulness and not by uncontrolled impulses. And when this discipline is integrated and becomes a firm habit, inner energy is reconfigured, inner peace is strengthened day by day, and life begins to naturally align with the best and highest version of oneself. The path to a meaningful life. In the constant pursuit of a meaningful and serene life, Stoic principles offer us an invaluable guiding light. We've explored how our words, both those we direct outwardly and our constant inner dialogue, are far more than just simple sounds. They are powerful tools, architects of our reality, and shapers of our character. Understanding the power of our narrative, how we teach others to treat us through our language, the wisdom of protecting our process of change in silence, and the undeniable eloquence of letting our results speak for themselves are fundamental steps on the path to self-mastery. We've seen how inner discipline powerfully manifests in the way we express ourselves, how silence can be a necessary refuge and a source of strength, the importance of processing our fears privately before sharing them with others, and the subtle danger of immediate gratification undermining our motivation. Finally, we've contemplated silence not just as the absence of noise, but as a teacher, especially in the profound art of listening, which opens us to understanding the world and ourselves. Embracing these teachings is not a theoretical exercise, but a daily practice. It demands constant vigilance over what we think and say, a conscious decision in every interaction, and unwavering patience with our own growth process. By integrating these Stoic principles into our communication and our lives, we begin to overcome reactivity, build more authentic relationships, and most importantly, develop a resilient character capable of finding serenity in any situation. Your inner voice is your greatest tool, and learning to use it wisely, combining words with silence and action, is the path to a life filled with meaning, virtue,